The year was 1929, and a 13-year-old boy from Waukesha, Wisconsin, was tinkering around with a $5 G-Autry guitar. He took a phonograph needle, jammed it into the guitar, so that instead of hearing the record, you heard the guitar. Very primitive. Many believe the first electric guitar. In 1941, he turned that gadget into a prototype. He called it the log. That's what it was. 4x4 wooden log with strings, pickup, plug. Far cry from this fancy one. Today, that enterprising teenager's in his 70s. Some musicians say he's the greatest innovator of modern musical technology. He's also an accomplished musician, composer, and performer. Ladies and gentlemen, Les Paul. The location is Fat Tuesdays on the Lower East Side of New York, and tonight it's filled to its modest capacity. From across the country and around the world, they've come to pay their respects to a man noted not only as a best-selling guitarist, but also as a great tinkerer with music and recording technology in the great tradition of American tinkering. The instrument of change, the Gibson Les Paul guitar, something that helped create modern popular music. The road to discovery wasn't easy. Les Paul's right arm, smashed in an auto accident, was set at a right angle so he can still play the guitar. He's had several ear operations and suffers from chronic arthritis that cripples his 76-year-old fingers. On top of all that, he's had a quintuple heart bypass.
Unfortunate things happen to me about every 10 years. I've got it all kind of figured out that every 10 years I get a heavy one. And about every 10 years I have a great invention that comes along that is accepted by the people and it turns out to be something very useful.
By forcing him to slow down, he says, his health problems have given him time to invent. One of his first devices was crafted more than 60 years ago when he was playing a mail-order guitar at local barbecue joints for small change.
And the people couldn't hear the guitar. So the bright idea came to me, why don't I amplify the guitar and make it louder? So the first thing that came to me was to take the half of telephone that you listen to, slip it under the strings. I slipped it under the strings, and lo and behold, it was much louder. But it was only under 2 strings. So then I got a second idea, and that was to take a pickup, a phonograph pickup, and jab it into the top of the guitar. And of course, that was much louder, and it covered all the strings.
Only partially satisfied with these improvisations, he began experimenting with heavier and thicker material, even tightening a string across a piece of railroad track to reduce feedback. The result was a significant improvement. But these first electric guitars had their drawbacks.
But again, you're not going to see Gene Autry playing a piece of steel on his horse. So I says, well, the steel is not practical.
So, in 1941, Les Paul produced this model. Nicknamed the Log, it's said to be the world's first solid-bodied guitar.
Finally came up with this idea to just take it 4x4. And so I went into a nightclub with just a 4x4. And I played it, and of course everybody really had me labeled as a nut, but I was labeled as a nut with my father, my brother. Everybody thought I was a little strange anyway. And so what happened is that it was 10 years later that the president of Gibson came to me and says, we'd like to sign you up and have you make a guitar, a solid body guitar. You pick it, you do what you want to do. And so I made the first Les Paul electric guitar, okay? Solid body, which is over there in the picture.
The guitar Les Paul plays today is a direct descendant, designed by Paul and the Gibson Company in 1951 Today's models are only slightly changed from the original. Before electrification, the guitar was used in bands largely as a rhythm instrument, right up to the end of the big band era. In the early 1950s, the electric guitar provided the backbone for a new sound that became known as rock and roll. But Les Paul's innovations in recording and sound reproduction may be even more significant. As early as 1935, he'd experimented with creating echo and multiple sound-on-sound effects using a pair of homemade record-cutting machines. The challenge was to reproduce the warmth and feeling of his live performances, at that time with his wife and partner, Mary Ford, on record and tape. His first tape machine, a gift from Bing Crosby just after the Second World War, provided the answer.
I turned to this machine that Bing gave me. I stared at it and I says, well, I have to do this all with one machine.
With the same principles he'd used for his old record-cutting machines, Les Paul delayed or echoed the notes recorded on the tape by reproducing them a split second later as they crossed the playback head. The end result became known as tape echo and was another technique often used by early rock and roll performers like Buddy Holly and Elvis Presley. For his sound-on-sound device, Les Paul added an extra playback head to listen to music he'd already recorded. Then he played or sang additional parts and recorded them all together, sometimes over and over again.
Somewhere there's music, I'll paint the tune. Somewhere there's heaven.
The multiple layered sound was a forerunner of today's multi-track recording techniques.
Till it comes true.
And I says, well, I got a crazy idea. I says, you know, I was thinking that maybe what we should do is, instead of one mono machine, what we should do is stack up 8 of them. And so if you look over here, what I did is I just took the electronics of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tape machines, tied them all together, and I said, now if I can get this over onto one piece of tape, I could be doing 8 things at once. And so the whole invention and the heart of this whole machine is to stack these heads in line, as many as you wish. And I started with 8. No one can read my writing, but that says howdy.
Howdy, okay.
At 76, Les Paul is currently preparing to record 4 new albums, this time using 96 channels, and he's again building a recording system. But his first love is playing music the way he says it should be played, live. So nearly every Monday night for the past 6 years, this is where he's been.